Good morning, St. Louis. It is 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. So, yeah, I know what time it is. It's time for the St. Louis Hustle Podcast with yours truly, Cortez Hustle, my girl, Michelle. Hey, and today we're talking a lesson in justice with the first Black St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney, Mr. Wesley Bell, has decided to join us this morning. We're super excited about that. So make sure y'all get your questions ready because it's going down, man. Brother's doing some amazing things for the community and for the culture to make this entire shindig situation better for us all. So how often is it that we get to actually sit with Black history? This is actual Black history, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So do me a huge favor, comment in the chat where you're from, drop the name of your business and or your brand, and smash that share button, ladies and gentlemen. Let's kick it this morning.
Growing up in St. Louis has never been easy, and most say if you want to succeed here, that you must leave and put down roots somewhere else because of the strong crabs in a barrel mentality here.
I don't know if I'm just an optimistic person, but to see people like Chuck Berry and Nelly make it in the music industry, or the Roberts brothers and Dave Stewart in business, or William Lacey Clay Jr. in politics, can we blame the city? Or is it that people just aren't hungry enough?
We're talking to all of the movers and shakers in this town, from entertainers to politicians, social activists and organizers, and of course, entrepreneurs.
Is there a curse on this city that holds people back? Is there an unseen hand that decides who makes it and who doesn't? You're about to find out.
Welcome to St. Louis Hustle.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the St. Louis Hustle Podcast. I'm Cortez Hustle. That's my girl, Michelle. Hey, and we're coming to you live and direct from the Thornton Online Marketing Studios right here in St. Louis, Missouri. If you're not familiar with Thornton Online Marketing, it is your premier digital marketing software solutions company, specifically dedicated to helping small local businesses grow their online impact and influence so they can make more money, so they can stay around. Because we know that small businesses are the core of this economy, so we want to help them do better. So all you got to do is text local biz to 314-730-3999 if you need some help with your local business online presence. Today we got Wesley Bell hanging out with us, and we're going to be talking about the role and the job of the St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney, some of the things that he has spearheaded, and some of the things that he's got coming, ladies and gentlemen, because it's all about helping us all be better. But before we get into any of that, Chalet, how was your weekend?
Well, my weekend was pretty good. It was a nice weekend? It rained somewhere through the weekend, didn't it? Well, I think we started off the weekend wet with Friday, and I work in the elements now because I'm out in the community. I'm out there trying to feed the people, feed the children. So I got rained on. And all this wonderfulness was not in love with the rain. I really wasn't. Well, I was supposed to be out there focused on the people. And when I tell you I about had a tantrum in the rain, they was looking at me like I was crazy. Like, yeah, it was a.
Did you have one of those? I'm melting.
I felt like, you know what? I just, it looks so easy. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna say this: when you're trying to pursue purpose, and that's my whole thing for 22. Through the rest of my life, when you're trying to pursue purpose really don't care. I told y'all earlier, purpose don't care about the cold, and purpose darn sure don't care about the rain. Because I was out there and I'm out there stopping wet doing this. And it's so funny because as we're feeding people and serving people, every car that pulled up was like, "What you doing in the rain?" "What I'm doing in the rain?" Oh, my truck driver was like, "Don't do it, Miss Seeley. Don't do it." I'm like, "I'm in the rain because you in the rain. What you do? If you wasn't in the rain, I wouldn't be in the rain. You out here for the free." But nevertheless, I didn't melt. I sit here today unmelted. I survived it. Got a chance. I did a little sugar shacking. I did just a little bit. I got my 2-step on. I got me a good cabbage veggie, just a teensy weensy little bit. But here's the thing: when you start moving to a different beat, I'm in the sugar shack trying to mind my own business, and this woman walks up and I spilled out all over. She mentioned, I ain't tried to. She mentioned something about not having her kids and losing so much in the last few years, and I was like, come on, Lord, can I just enjoy this one? I don't even be drinking like that, though. Can I just do this one? Man, when I say I poured out, she was crying. People was like, what's wrong with her? I didn't mean to. She had to go home. She said, I gotta go home and get my life together. Thank you, though. Appreciate you, ma'am. Take care.
Man,
have a nice day.
I'm the club owner sitting off in the corner, like, lady, would you stop running away my patrons? Like,
you heard me? That's like, who invited the church lady? Who invited her? It happens. I'll be trying to come turn people's life up, and I really don't. I just had to remind her the guy still loved her, and the restoration was on the way, and the more she cried, the more I went in. So it was a great weekend. All I had to say was a great weekend.
Awesome. Well, we're not going to delay any further. Michelle's got the word of the day coming up, but we're going to go ahead and bring on Wesley Bell. And I feel like I'm not putting enough respect on his name, Michelle.
Put
So
some
I'm
respect
going
on
to
his
call him Dr. Bell while he's here. I feel a little bit better myself if I call him Dr.
What do you call him? I don't want to call him Wes.
I don't think Wesley Bell is enough respect on his name. So without further ado, guys, this is literally St. Louis's first African-American, St. Louis County's first African-American prosecuting attorney. And let me introduce to some of you guys and present the others. Mr. Wesley Bell, Professor Wesley Bell. I think it's Professor. I think it's going to be Professor today. Bell, how are you today, my friend? Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, we're going to get into who you are and what got you on this path to fighting justice. But before we do that, Michelle does a segment on the show called The Word of the Day, where she brings us a word. And she's known to make people cry, Mr. Bell. So hopefully you are ready for this word this
Tough
morning.
Skin, right?
But I wanted to bring you on just in case you have some insight to this particular word of the day as well. So let's get into the Michelle A. word of the day.
And now the Michelle I. word of the day.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl Michelle A with the Michelle A word of the day, right? So during the month of March, we've been talking about love. I'm going to take a little bit of a break from that to talk about new beginnings, right? So I was out, y'all know I was out this weekend, and I ran into a couple people that I hadn't seen in a while because my new job has got me doing new things. And the biggest question, people's like, oh, I heard you talk about you got a new job on Facebook. Why would you retire just to start working again? That was the biggest question. No one could really understand it. I was asked that 3 or 4 times in one evening. Why would you start from scratch? One person said. And I had to laugh to myself because I was like, wow, sometimes we associate retirement with kicking our feet up somewhere on a sandy beach or just, hey, I'm tired, boss, and I don't want to work no more. But that's not always the reason for retirement. Sometimes you have to retire what you're doing from one thing to begin doing something else in another area, right? And that's really simply what it was. So I just want to encourage somebody today about a new beginning, right? Sometimes you got to retire the old to get to the new. When I look back on what I did in my old season, not one moment was lost, not one interaction, not one encounter, nothing was lost. I gained so much. So to those that question, why are you starting from scratch? I'm not starting from scratch, boo. I'm starting from experience. Ha! I'm gonna let that sit. Okay, I'm gonna pick it up again. I'm not starting from scratch. I'm starting from experience. Okay, nothing was lost from my past. Everything that I gained in my past, I'm using in my now, and that is what is going to propel me into my future. So that's it for today. That's your word of the day. Not starting over, not starting from scratch, starting from experience. Boom, give it hit. There it is.
That is the Michelle A word of the day. Professor Bell, did you have anything to add to the word of the day?
I think retire can kind of, I agree with you, Michelle A. Retire can have a negative connotation sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes, we're just moving on to a new chapter. And we're taking all of our experiences to head to that new chapter. So, hey, I felt it in my heart. I felt that in my spirit.
Oh, you know what? That was free. I didn't go charge you for that today, Mr. Bell.
I ain't got no money, so it don't matter.
Love it. All right, Professor Bell. I'm going to stop calling him Professor. I don't want people to get confused. Mr. Wesley Bell, we ask everybody who comes on the St. Louis Social Podcast the same question And you ain't special, so you don't get nothing different. No, we're going to ask it to you as well. And the question is this, brother. Who the heck are you?
You know what? I'm a North County kid. You know, love sports, love my family. I'm a man of faith, and you know, I was fortunate that I had a foundation of, you know, parents and you know, in a bigger foundation, if you will, that supported me and so I use this because, you know, it's interesting you call me professor, but I used to teach at the community college, and you know, one of the things that I was big on was telling my students, you got to maximize your potential. You know, we all have different paths, we all have different callings. And I don't care what your calling is, maximize it. Do the best that you can. And so, you know, I was fortunate when I was growing up, I was going to college before I knew what college was, because my parents, I mean, they just tattooed that in my head. So you ask 3-year-old Wesley, what is he doing? He telling you, I'm going to college, and has no clue what it means. Wow. And so, but that's just about the, you know, having that support system, and you know, and I was fortunate in that sense. Make no mistake about it, I was blessed. But yeah, I was just the kid who, you know, was, you know, had three brothers and 3 younger sisters, but they came along a little later. And you know, it was sports, it was school, and I'll say this, I'll end this before you get to your next question. As long as school was cool, everything was good in the house. Like, I could do whatever. You want to stay up late, you fine. Let those grades slip. Listen, I don't like the way you breathing. Why are you breathing that way? You know, so whatever you do is a problem if the grades are slipping. And so I was fortunate and blessed for that.
I love it. Well, take us through the journey of a young Wesley. Let's go elementary, middle school, high school. Like, give me an impactful moment that helped to shape the young man that decided to go off to law school and really start pursuing justice. Give me a defining moment, elementary, middle school, high school, in the life of young Wesley. We know parents and the culture of your household was very important, but what were some of the things outside of the home that the young Wesley experienced? There were so many things. I would start off with, and I think it can be, can be underestimated some, was I started in youth sports early, and I had a lot of positive role models and mentors, coaches, if you will, as well. And you learn that discipline early. And I remember my mother saying, because I started playing football when I was like 5. And I remember my mother telling me, I don't really remember this, but she would tell me, you know, you'd be 3 years old and one of your brothers hit you and you just start crying, you know. But then you got into football and that same hit and you just bounce right up, you know, because it toughens you up a little bit. It's also about discipline and working with others. And that was big for me. And having that opportunity to do it. My grandmother was huge in my life because both of my parents worked. And so in those formative years, you know, when I would get home from school until about 6 o'clock, I was with my grandmother, and she could have just let me run wild. But no, I got home, and before I went outside, we were doing the homework and we were practicing the spelling words. And remember that, like, and so that instilled the importance of education and just got me off to got me off on a positive start, a positive track, if you will, early on, which I just think was imperative. And so I'm gonna fast forward if you want to ask me any other questions, but I'm gonna fast forward. And so then after high school, you know, my senior year of high school, I had my first of 7 eye surgeries. And so that kind of derailed sports for me and got me out of that discipline, if you will, of school. And then I started having a little fun after college. And so I moved to live with my father in Atlanta. And so my father was like, look, either you know, if you're not gonna go to school, because I sat out of school for a year, and in my mind I was just taking a break, but we know how that is. And so my father put me to work. I'm cutting grass, I'm trimming bushes, and like he's like, well, look, if you don't go to school, I'm just gonna let you know what your life is gonna look like.
And so
Wow.
that hit with me. And so,
Yeah.
because again, I don't mind hard work, but I'm not trying to do that work. And so I immediately got back into school the next fall, and it was a wrap for there. It was Dean's List every year because I saw what the other side looked like. And there's nothing wrong with that side, but I had to find out what my path was. And so from that point on, I wasn't playing around. So
Gotcha. I love that, man. Michelle, you got some?
No, just what he said. You found out what that other life looked like. Hey, man, it'll make you get your life together when you figure out, it help you figure out who you want to be real quick. And as you said, there's nothing wrong with it, but life has a way, and I'm saying God has a way of helping us make those choices, and it's on or off, and it looks like it was a choice for you. There you go.
And he sat me down, and I did, because when you talk about things that kind of hit with me and connected with me, is that when I was living with him, he sat down with me and he told me, like, Wes, this is the time, the decisions that you make in life now will impact whether you have a good life or a hard life. And this is your decision. Now, at that time, I think I was 19 or 20. So I didn't want to show that it hit. So I played it off like, whatever.
Right.
I mean, you can see 20 years later, I'm still remembering that as if it was yesterday, because it did connect, and it did inspire me to make certain that, hey, if you want something in life, you got to go get it, and it's not going to be comfortable, and it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, and that reminds me of a Jim Rohn quote. He said, "Living in poverty is hard. Pursuing success is hard. Choose your heart." Like, they both hard.
One of my favorite quotes: "You can quit or you can keep going. They both hurt."
They both hurt. Choose your hurt.
Right there.
Which hurt you gonna choose? One just got a greater reward on the other side of it. So I love it. And you got yourself together and you figured out the school thing. How long did it take for you to figure out the law thing? Was it always law as you were going to school, or were you considering some other majors, or what made you go down the path of law?
It was always law for me. Now, through that path, I started having those doubts, man, that's 7 years of school. And so as I got into my freshman year of college, I was like, man, I can't do this for 6.5 more years. So I started, looking into other things. And what I told my students, and because what kind of worked with me, what kind of, based on my experience, was you get into that junior year, then you start realizing, okay, this wasn't so bad. Or you might decide, no, this is enough. But, I tell students, don't look at the whole journey. Look at and set small goals, small attainable goals, and then you can get to that longer goal later down the road. So I got to about my junior year, and I was like, you know what? Actually, I could do this. And so, but that's kind of how it happened with me. But it was always y'all remember a show back in the day called LA Law?
Love it.
I'm dating myself. But that was the show when I was a kid. Like, that's what I want to do.
Wow.
That's what I want to do. And I never wavered from wanting to do it.
I love that. It's not always, a lot of people say they knew when they were a kid what they wanted to be and what they wanted to do, but it's very, like you said, life has so many twists and turns. It's rare that someone actually sticks it through and actually becomes that and gets through it and becomes that at the highest level. So what was the first gig out of college? Pass the bar, and what was the first gig out of college in terms of the first law firm, or did you get right into the path of law that you really wanted to settle into, or did you just find yourself just taking the first thing that came your way?
No, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a public defender. That was it. Gotcha. I interned every summer in law school. Even my senior year of college, I interned with the public defender's office because I was actually born in Alton. And so we lived, so my grandmother lived in Oakwood housing projects. And so most of my time was spent there because I spent it with her after work. And so everyone that I knew was on the business end of the criminal justice system. So that was my experience. My experience was such and such got locked up, such and such got in trouble. And I was also kind of it dated myself too. I was also kind of a product of the OJ trial. And so what framed my view of the criminal justice system was, one, everybody I know they're getting locked up, of the people that I see with interactions. And then the other side was, if you have resources, you can get representation. And so my thought was, I want to make sure that these people who I know and who I've at least have grown up around, at least get, quality representation. Because in my mind at that time, they were all innocent. I thought everybody charged with a crime more than likely was innocent. Because that's what they told me. When I would get arrested, when I was younger, and somebody get arrested, or I'd hear them. Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, let me just make sure they get quality representation. And so that was my first job out of law school. It's as you all know, public defenders make the lowest amount of pay of any attorney. And I mean, you're talking at that time, I don't even think I made $30,000 a year. But let me tell you something. It was the most I had ever made at that point. So you couldn't tell me I wasn't rich.
And you ball.
Man, I thought I was balling out of control.
I love it. I love it. Well, Professor Wesley, I too am a product of the OJ trial, and I'll tell you how. Right, I was deciding, like, I had finished playing and ripping and running the streets, and I was like, you know what? I need to settle down and go find me a wife. I must have been about 20 years old or something like that. I was like, man, I'm through playing. I'm going to find me a wife. And I've always been taught, if you want to find you a wife, you go down south. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go down south and find me a wife. And then I was kind of wavering, like, man, should I go? Should I not? I said, you know what's going to decide it for me? If OJ is not guilty, I'm going. If he's guilty, I'm staying. Right? Like what a way to decide a major pivotal moment in your life, right?
It's the young hustle mind. Okay.
Yes.
Young hustle.
Johnny Cochran's skill set decided whether or not I was going to pick up my whole life and move to Mississippi. And of course, he was not guilty, so I moved to Mississippi. Didn't find a wife down there. Guess where I found my wife? In St. Louis when I moved back. Right.
Hey, it works like that sometimes. Right?
But that's how it works sometimes. You talked about being that kind of, you just wanted to be a servant to the people. And you're right, man. You're around family of people who are in the justice system. Of course, their family like, my baby didn't do it, no matter what the evidence says that stacks up against them.
So true.
What was it like when you started to enter into that space as a young man? Because we know that there's a couple things that really affect us in our careers and our jobs. A is your youth, and then B, it is your race and your background. So did you have to deal with those two elements coming into the system, wanting to do all of this good, whether the older cats on the scene like, young brother, you just need to go in there and do what you're doing and get out of the way. And then was there the racial element of, okay, you're a Black attorney, but you're not really a real attorney because you're Black, because we know those kinds of things happen as well. So what was that experience from the age and then also the race factor as you went into the public defender's office to, do some good?
I think I was probably too young, too naive, too excited to really pay attention to those things at the time. Because to me, you have to understand, I didn't know a lawyer until I was in law school. So the idea of being a lawyer, I didn't have any family members. I mean, I didn't have any friends that were lawyers.
It was it.
You grow up. Exactly. So I was so excited, like pinching myself, like, I'm actually a lawyer for real. This happened.
Yeah.
So I didn't even think about those particular struggles. My whole mindset was just like my dad and my mom always told me by their example, was like, you got to go get it. And even if there are some things that are unfair, which we know there are, especially with Black folks, we have to deal with so many things, but it is what it is. And so you can be upset about it, or you can just keep grinding. And so my thought was, I'm gonna, and I had, and Cortez, you mentioned Johnny Cochran, who was my idol. And so I'm like, okay, I've seen him do it. So if he can do it, why can't I do it? So my thought was, I'm going to be the best trial attorney that I possibly can. So, you know, we had too many cases. That's the nature of being a public defender.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but my thought was, I'm going to be ready. And so I would go in there. They had a docket. They still have a docket, but it was a little bit different back then in the city, especially is that they would call you. So they have a list of cases in order that were up for trial. So if your trial was number 1, you're getting called first. And then if that trial pleads, like most trials plead, then they would go to the second case. So in that, if you were in the top 50, if I'm not mistaken, they expected you to be ready. So if you had a case that was in that list, going into the list, like say 40, you needed to be ready because it was a good chance that one of the divisions was going to get to you. So I would have on average probably 5 to 7 cases that were in that top 50. And, you know, some attorneys wouldn't be ready on like that 3rd or 4th case, thinking it wouldn't go or hoping it wouldn't go. I was ready. So I came in there, boom, let's go. I wanted to try a case. I wanted to learn how to try cases. And I just wanted to establish that reputation that, look, you know, if Wesley comes in, he's going to be ready. And that helps your clients because, you know, there's time as a prosecutor or a defense attorney, if you know the other side has a reputation for not being ready, and you know, you're not going to give them as good a deal. You're going to take advantage. You're not going to give them as good a deal. But when you know somebody going to try anything, I don't care what time of day, let's go. That's going to inform the way you deal with that person as well. And so, you know, and again, I just wanted to have a reputation as a hard worker because I was, and that was, you know, that's how I came up. And so, you know, for me, I wasn't thinking about, okay, well, people looking at me differently or whatever. I mean, I can look back on it and I can think of examples where that probably was the case. Right. Going through it, I was just like, man, I'm an attorney. I'm about to show them why.
I'm living my dream. Let me get
That is so awesome. Why couldn't you have been a traffic attorney? Where was you when I needed you?
I was back in the day. I did all that stuff.
You was.
So my 2 years out of law school, you know, for 2 years I worked at the public defender's office, and then I opened my practice, which was a general practice. So I did criminal defense, I did juvenile work, I did traffic. Because traffic for a young attorney, that keeps cash coming in, that keeps the lights on, because it gives you, you know, because some of your cases take a while to write them for trial and things of that nature. So yeah, I was doing all that stuff.
That's exciting. Your energy and the spirit of it. So I really can understand when you say, you know what, there might have been these exterior things going on, but in the moment, you were so on fire because I say this all the time about what I do, but it sounds like you were the person that says, I get to do this. I get to do it.
Absolutely.
You know, not a lot of us get a chance to work in that thing that has been our heart's desire for so long. So sounds like you just was the dude that showed up and they was like, here come Wesley. Doggone it.
Listen,
doggone it.
He got 18,000 cases and he's still smiling.
Right. And let me tell you something. You know, for me, it was just about Cortez, the hustle.
Yes.
You know, I was hitting all of like the gas stations. Hey, can I put my cars out at the front? I mean, just if it's an event, I'm you know, getting my information out, you know, showing up at the courthouse early because a lot of people show up and they don't have representation and they're looking for an attorney. Like, hey, here I am.
Yes.
You know, so you gotta put that work in. If you want to make a successful business. And I'll tell you one of the biggest motivators is rent. Like when you go out on your own, you don't have, there's no work, you know, there's no work pay or any vacation pay, or, you know, you don't have anything. You either gotta eat what you kill, as they say.
Yeah.
And so
you don't kill it, we don't eat.
Yeah, if you're gonna go out on your own, you're gonna have to work. And I know a lot of attorneys now who are still doing this are younger attorneys, and you can tell the ones who are going to be successful because they're grinding, they're hustling, and they're working on their path, which are on the job, the skills of the job, which I think is so important. And that's why I think starting at the public defender's office or the prosecutor's office, where you don't have to worry about the financial side of it, because when you go in practice, it's about business. You got staff to pay, you got rent to pay. So, you know, if you try a case when you're in private practice, it's hard to make money because you're stuck in trial. You know, you're in that trial 9 to 5, 3 to 5 days or longer. But as a public defender or prosecutor, you can focus on the craft. You can focus on getting, working, learning your craft and getting better at your craft and not having to worry about that financial side. So those 2 years at the public defenders, well, plus the internships, was invaluable for me because I got to try probably 50 cases, 50 jury trials. And most people, a private attorney, they won't try that in their career half the time. But I got I got that opportunity to do that early, learn my craft, become a good trial attorney. So then when I went out on my own, I had that in my bag. And so now I can focus on the business side as well.
I love that because I'm such a huge fan of business. And I believe that entrepreneurship, to me, is the shortest distance between working class and wealthy, right? And I believe that when you understand that, it makes you take a different look at who you are and the things that you have gone through and come through. And I don't think as much as I love higher education, I don't think our school system did our parents any justice in helping them to shape children to at least know that entrepreneurship is an option, right? So I believe in higher education, but I believe that it could be revamped in a way that says, hey, here's what you could do to go and get a job and perform this skill for somebody else. But this is also a skill set that you can turn into your own business if your heart so desire, because I believe that we are in the position that we are in as Black people in this country, largely because out of the 2 million Black-owned businesses, there's only roughly 100,000 that actually hire people, right? And it's like, we've got to get in positions to be able to employ people and not look to any other race or culture to provide jobs for us. So I love that you had that opportunity to say, hey, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna use my skill set, I'm gonna hone my craft, but eventually I got to go out and jump out here on my own. And you talked about getting out there and hustling, but that decision, right? How tough was it at that time? Because I know a couple of attorney friends and they're like, all of the OGs was like, man, don't go into private practice, bro. That you don't want that smoke this early in your career. You talking about 2 years after you went and made that leap. So how difficult was that decision? And what were the early days like of you trying to figure out payroll as a young man and a young attorney and a young boss with employees and staff?
Listen, Michelle A., I needed your word of the day back then. Listen, Cortez, you are so on point. It was scary, man. Now that I remember vividly, having conversations with my mother, having conversations with my friends like, for real, you gonna do this, bro? Because you and I'll tell you how it worked out for me. So the public defenders, if you remember that economic when the economy crashed, this would have been early 2000s, so around 2003. So I worked at that time what was called the Special Public Defender's Office. So we did the conflict cases for the entire region, meaning if more than one person was charged with a crime, the public defender's office couldn't represent them because it would be a conflict of interest to represent both defendants. So they had a conflicts office that handled that second defendant. And that's the office that I worked in under Robert Steele, who was a mentor at that time. And so, or continues to be actually. And so they were going to send me to the one of the regular public defender's offices. And I was like, you know what? Maybe that's like God telling me this is the time to make that jump. And so I started like flirting with the idea, talking about it. Even reached out to one firm, and if you know anything about the criminal justice field, you know Scott Rosenblum, who is also a friend, and I would even consider a mentor. And so I reached out to him, and I was like, Scott, I'm thinking about going private. Do you have any positions? And he was like, Wes, I do. He was working out some office space because he was expanding. And he was like, I don't have a place to put you. So give me like 2 weeks and we'll have that done. And you can come on and work with us. So in that 2 weeks, I'm like, you know what, let me just go ahead and get us a try. Let's just see what happens. And so I got my first retainer, my first client, $1,500. Now, remember what I told you about my first job, which was making somewhere around 29 grand a year. And, you know, all the bills that come with that. So that's really like nothing. But I got that $1,500 retainer. Listen, you would have thought I hit the lottery. And so I told Scott, I'm like, you know what, I'm good. I'm going to make this on my own. Now, if I know what I knew now, I'd have been like, man, that ain't enough. Come on, you got to know better. But I don't think I'd ever had $1,500 just free and clear in my hand ever in life. So that I thought, again, I'm rich again. And so, but you know, it kept rolling. It kept going. But I started working. I started hustling, as we talked about before. I'm hitting the gas stations. I'm hitting restaurants. I'm hitting business owners. Anybody that will let me put my name out there. And it just kept rolling. And so my practice thrived for years. Matter of fact, I didn't shut it down until 2000, until I was sworn into this position. But it was scary. It was scary because, you know, you got bills. I had a young son. You know, it is scary. And so, you know, and so I think there is a benefit into doing it and trying, because I think you're right with respect to, you know, we have to invest in ourselves. If we're going to invest in our communities, we got to invest in ourselves. And I was able to hire people, and I was able to give jobs, and my assistant now started with me there 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And at that time she had young children. And so I felt responsible for all that, but you know, we worked and it worked out. But it was scary. To say it was scary.
It was scary. But like, you kept someone employed for 20 years.
Wow, that is big.
That's huge. Like,
just the whole 20 years, but yeah, I kept somebody.
But yeah, you had opportunities, and you were able to make that payroll and help feed that family because of your willingness to step out on faith and build something of your own, right?
And I got to say this too, Tamiko Martinez, just dear friend. And so we both worked at the public defender's office. She was a secretary at the time. And so when I went out on my own, she said, Wes, I'll go with you. And I was like, you know, I've been practicing for 2 years. You got young children. I can't promise you I can make payroll. And she bet on me. She said, no, I think we can do this. And she came out with me. She ran the office so I could be in court, running the court side. Wow. And she went on, and I got to point this out. So she stayed with me for about, I think, 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years. And so she went on to probation and work in probation and parole, in corrections. And then she even worked in the circuit attorney's office. And so when I was elected, and we always stayed close, she's my sister. And so when I was elected, I was like, hey, I think you should come with me. And at that time, she was working at the circuit attorney's office as an investigator. And so I'm like, you should come with me because I want you to part of my leadership team. And so now, and she stepped out on faith again. And so she's with me now. Not only she started off as my executive assistant, now she's our director of personnel. And Cortez, I say all that to bring it full circle to your point is, you know, you start giving people jobs, you start investing in people, and next thing you know, 20 years down the line, she's one of the most valuable members of my leadership team at the prosecutor's office. She went and got her. She took that experience, went to the probation office, corrections, an investigator. And so now she brings all that experience, which started off just as a secretary.
Yeah.
And got a bachelor's degree and master's degree in that time.
And I was going to say, the most underrated part of entrepreneurship and us stepping out on faith and pursuing our dreams is the way we inspire others, right? And nobody talked about that, because in us having the courage to do what we do, we give other people the courage to say, you know what? I'm going to go back to school, right? And I'm going to add value to. Wesley saw something in me. He brought me, he's been pouring into me. Now let me invest in myself so I can be more of a value add to him. And we don't talk enough about that, the way we inspire others, even though
as we were inspired.
as we were
We just
inspired,
paying
right?
it forward, right? Because you're right. I
And
used to be on her all the time. You need to go to school. You can do it. Well, Wes, I got this and that. That's an excuse. Keep pushing. You're
That sound
exactly right,
familiar,
because that's
Cortez?
exactly what was told to me.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, Brother Wes, I definitely didn't want to bring you here and get all the way into your background business, but I think it's important. This entire show for me and everything I do is about the journey, right? Because it's the journey that says to other people, wow, I'm a young attorney and they're telling me that I probably don't want to do my own private practice. And here Wesley Bell made that leap. Maybe I can reach out, maybe I can draw some inspiration and make some of those same moves. But at the same time, I want people to understand the importance of the role that you are in now. So talk real quick about the responsibilities of the St. Louis County Prosecutor's Office, and then let's get into some of the things that you are doing to make waves, make impacts, and make changes that will impact us all, and make a better living situation for all of those of us in the St. Louis County area.
You know, Cortez, it's funny that, point that you made, people think that because they hadn't heard of you, that there was no, that you came from nowhere, that there was no origin, like you just all of a sudden appeared.
Popped on the scene,
exactly, as opposed to all the years of work and planning that went into this. And so even with, running for prosecutor, there's a lot of people who are like, oh man, that's just cool. Like, you just kind of came out of nowhere. No, we were doing this for years. And I was a city councilman before this, and not just in any random small city showing up, for a few hours. No, this was in Ferguson. So that was a full-time job that only paid $250 a month during, and I was elected 9 months after Michael Brown was killed. And so I was part of the negotiating team with the Department of Justice, President Obama's Department of Justice. I always got to clarify that. Much respect, but that was work, and that was and I learned a lot during that time. And so in this office, and as the prosecutor's office, a lot of those lessons are what molded me into what I am, and helped me create the position, or the agenda and the policies, because I saw working in the municipal courts, I saw some of the abuses. I saw some of the things that were done right and a whole lot of things that were done wrong. And so when I was on the Ferguson City Council and I got to work with the Department of Justice, and I was able to broaden my perspectives and see that this wasn't just a St. Louis thing, it started making me think, okay, I guess we need to look at this on a broader scale. This isn't just a Ferguson thing or even a St. Louis thing. And so that's where the inspiration to run for St. Louis County Prosecutor was, because, I want to make sure that, I learned early on, so we're going to kind of bring this all full circle. Before I thought everybody was innocent. And so as I start doing the job, I start realizing, that's not really the case. There's a lot of people who are good for it, but they all deserve fairness. And we want to make sure that, if you go harm someone, you have to be held accountable, period. So when people say, oh, well, you don't care about the victims' families, I'm like, are you crazy? Like, Black folks, that we are generally the victims. When you look at the data, we're victimized more than any other groups in many regards. And so we absolutely understand that an individual who harms someone, kills someone, they need to go be set down, no question about it. But there's a whole bucket of people who their only crime is harming themselves, or being poor. And those are the people that we can have these different approaches and help them in ways that will not only help that individual, but actually keeps us safer. Because the data shows that when you put someone in jail just for a few days, they're more likely to reoffend. So if you have someone with a drug problem and you lock them up, it may sound good in a soundbite. Oh, we're tough on crime. That might sound good, but the recidivism rates, which reach 80%, show that it has the opposite effect. You are making us less safe, because that person ends up committing another crime, and that crime often is more serious as they start the cycle of incarceration. But if you started at the beginning point and you get them the help that they need, then the data shows they are significantly less likely to reoffend, and they're more likely to be taxpayers or to be able to hustle or to have a great show like this. You know, they're going to be productive members of society. So we got to think about, like, what does public safety really mean? Is it just words, or is it or is it real? And so when I tell people this, like, you know, and I'm a big Pac fan, and Pac would always say, you know, there's no secret to life. You get what you give. And the bottom line is that I even look at the philosophy of this job is not difficult. People try to make it more complex than it is. It's real simple. If it's serious and violent offenses, then we're going to come down on you, period. You're going to be held responsible. You're going to be sat down. But if you commit lower level, nonviolent crimes that in many places aren't even considered crimes, let's give those individuals the help that they need. We can walk and chew gum. We can do two things at the same time. We can be tough with the people you need to be tough with, and then with those people who just need help, which we all know people who had they got a break early on, could have went in a different direction. We all know people like that. And so now we've been able to do that. And man, I'm telling you, we got examples. This is not just data. We have actual people that we can cite that we have helped steer them on a different path. And so it's straightforward.
I just want to make a quick comment, going back to the Ferguson deal. And so from what I've read and heard, that you were pretty instrumental with what happened with a lot of the traffic cases. You know, how they, so I sit here as a product of what you helped put into motion. And I say, thank you. You know, and I tell my story freely. I don't hide my past. It is what it is. I've never done anything serious, but I was that person that was caught up in traffic offenses. So I had, I might have had 13 different warrants, all in the county, from about 7 different municipalities. And I was a single parent, and I was doing the best I could. But the more I drove, and none of my offenses were like, oh, I ran a light. I just kept getting pulled over for bad tags. But I went to jail over 7 times. And I'm like, I wanted to be free of that, but I didn't know how. And I was knee deep in it and didn't know how to get out. And one day it just got better and it went away. And so once I believe we had Captain Clay on, and he was saying, yeah, you know, Wesley, he'll put that into, I was just like, I was floored, because I knew ultimately somebody had to, you know, God had to give somebody the inspiration, but I'm a product of that, because in the moment, in the thick of it, I didn't know how I was going to get after that thing. And it allowed me the freedom to be a better employee. I was a boss. I went to jail at work. It was bad. But it allowed me to be, I feel like a lot of it played for me to be here and say, I had that experience, but I am free now. And so thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You know, I can tell you this. So, you know, I started my career, and I talk about this. So I was doing traffic work. So I was representing people, and I saw what you're talking about. And I would have clients that would have, like, what you're saying is not an exaggeration. Some people may be listening like, she's saying 13, but she just exaggerated. No, I saw people with 13, 15 warrants and misdemeanors in 13 different municipalities, and representing them. And that was so much work, because you gotta coordinate all these warrants. So you get one warrant recalled, but now they're getting picked up by the next one, and you just, it's like this dominoes. Oh man, I get you. And so there's a couple things that I'm proud of, and you can Google it. So check the receipts. So when I was the judge, when I started at my first job in the municipal courts was with Elder City in 2015, I believe. And so I knew what you were talking about. So those were the kind of things that I was bringing to my court. And so my court was in Velda City. And, you know, when I was there, was the first court to not just do an amnesty day, because a lot of places have done amnesties. We just dismissed everything that was over 5 years that didn't involve a victim. As long as it didn't involve a victim, we just dismissed it. We didn't just recall the warrant, we dismissed them, because we've seen these cases where people just sitting around like your example for several years with warrants, and look, at this point, come on, it's traffic. If this was homicide, no, we're not just gonna do that. But this is traffic. So let's give people a break. And we knew everything that was going on in this region, the abuses. So let's just have a clean start. And so when we had a couple other courts that, you know, that I worked with, that I talked with, and who did the same thing. My good friend Raphael Morris was one of those courts who followed suit as well. And so one quick anecdote I want to share with you is that, you know, when I was running for office, for this office, as a matter of fact, county prosecutor, we were going to our office, and we had one of our offices headquarters in Ferguson, right next to the subway on West Florissant. And so as I'm getting out, this woman stops me and she's like, "Hey, you were because I was also the prosecutor in Riverview." She said, "You were the prosecutor in Riverview. I had all these warrants for tags and you sat me down." And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't remember her, but I appreciated what she said. She's like, you took all, you had all these warrants and you recalled them and you were like, "We are not in the business of keeping people from getting to work. And so you work with me to get that stuff done." And again, you know, those are when you put yourselves in these positions, we can help people in so many different ways. And so that's why I appreciate what you all are doing, because even this format, somebody is watching and somebody is being inspired to do something that they wouldn't. And so we all have our reach. Some larger than others, but we all have our reach of people that we can impact. And when I was in that position, that's what I wanted to do. I was going to make sure, look, if I can help somebody, I'm going to help them. And I got some other stories, but I know y'all probably have other questions. But
no, this is such good stuff, because I don't think the people and the decision-making chairs are really paying attention to the impact on the day-to-day lives of some of the people. And it is easy to say, well, they ought to just get their tags right and they won't have a problem, right? And it's funny, because I'm a big fan of the show.
It's like saying, well, you should just get $1 million and then not have to worry about any of it, right?
Yeah, I was watching the show Billions last night. And if you're not familiar with the show, it's on Showtime. And there's a attorney general who hates billionaires, right? And so he's going after this billionaire and caught him up on some stuff. They were having the Olympic Games come to New York, and he ended up, you know, squashing that whole deal. And the Olympic Games are now going to LA. And it's like, yes, that's a win for me, because I was able to affect this billionaire's pocket. And it's like, did you really? What you did do, though, is you blocked 50,000 jobs from coming to New York. Is what you did do while you chasing this one big fish. So I love that you have the heart and mind to consider the impact that it is truly having, some of these small crimes and some of the stuff that we all get caught up in as young people, right? How many young people have a felony on their record because they got caught with some marijuana, and their whole life is changed because they can't get gainfully employed and things of that nature? And I was like, man, there's things that we could do, and I'm glad to see that your office is doing it. Any other big initiatives you're pushing right now? And tell folks how they can get behind and support. And then I've got a couple quick questions from your buddy Clay I want to share.
I would say, I mean, there's so many things I could talk about. One that comes to mind that we're about to roll out. So this is actually the premiere, like literally, we haven't rolled it out.
No, it's a St. Louis podcast premiere. Give it to us.
We are about to roll out our elder abuse and disabled persons hotline, so that because what we find is that many of our seniors, it's not so easy for them to just get online and register for stuff. That's just not their world. And so we wanted to have a hotline that was manned and womaned, if you will, so that they could call directly into us if they had any kind of issues. And it could be anything, because if it's something that we don't do, then we'll connect them to the resources that they need. And so that's something that will be rolling out in the next week or so. But we're really proud, because we got to work with our seniors. And as a society, we don't value our seniors like we should. That is a reservoir of information and knowledge. And so we got to make sure that we're taking care of them, and many of them don't feel comfortable in this new, tech world, if you will. Because I know my grandmother, may she rest in peace, like, yeah, this was not, my mama don't even like doing a lot of this stuff.
Right.
So you can imagine, some of our grandparents, but that's something that we're rolling out. But obviously our diversion program, that's one of the things that we wanted to be aggressive in our expansion of the resources that we can provide people, because we know how important it is to get people the help that they need to address the underlying root causes of crime, because that's how you really deal with crime. Locking people up, keep in mind, the overwhelming majority of people are going to get out. And so if you just lock them up and just say, hey, just deal with it, well, guess what? You're releasing someone who is now in a worse position than they were, worse resources, and then you wonder why our reoffender rates are so high. And so that's big. And then lowering the jail population for low-level nonviolent offenders was big for us. And so now, since we've got into office, we've reduced the jail population of, and again, low-level nonviolent offenders by 27% in St. Louis County. The lowest has been since like the late 90s or something, like something crazy like that. And by and large, the people that we're helping in our program, we're talking. And let me say this this last point before you get to your next question. A year out of prison in Missouri, our recidivism rates are around 50%, about 45%. So about half the people are going back. 10 years out around the country, recidivism rates are about 80%. And I think Captain Farmer talked about this. And so that means 8 out of 10 people going back. In our diversion program, our success rate is 92%, 8% recidivism rates. And so that means people are getting out, they're staying out, they're not reoffending. And that not only keeps us safe, but more importantly, it helps people. So we're proud of that. There's other things, but I'll get to your questions, but we're really proud of the work. And it's been a team effort too.
Yeah, it helps people. And then on the bigger scale, it helps the economy at large, because these people are going home, they're working jobs, they're paying taxes, they're sending kids to school, they're shopping, and sales tax is huge, right? So all
as
of that
opposed to taking from society, because it costs about $30,000 a year to incarcerate someone. So that's $30,000 in the hole. Now we're coming out on the other side where we're coming out in the positive, because, like you said, they're paying taxes, they're doing all those things. Absolutely.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, your good friend Clay Farmer wants everybody to know that Professor Bell, I wanted to clear something up. Professor Bell said he played football. Well, kind of, sort of, was on the team, but never ever got in the game. But that ain't my business.
See, here's the thing, though, Clay. I got the receipts, man. I got the receipts. I played. Matter of fact, I played with a couple people who made it to the league. Terrell Fletcher was a year ahead of me, but he made it to the league. Played for San Diego. Ronnie Ward was in my class. I played with him. Had more touchdowns than Ronnie ever did in high school, although he was much bigger, faster, and all that stuff. All that stuff. But no, I went to Hayeswood East. I played both sides of the ball. And again, I'm not going to knock Normandy. Love our folks in Normandy, but we're talking sports, and there's Hayeswood East, and then there's Normandy. So he was Normandy, so it is what it is. But I'm just saying that. And
he wants me to bring up this beef with you as well, because Mayor Nate Griffin is a good friend of mine. In fact, I actually ran his social media campaign when he first got elected to office over the city of Wellston. As a write-in candidate, I was the social media guy that put him in front of all of our peers, and we came out and did that thing, man. So Professor Wesley Bell.
That firsthand. I saw that firsthand. I actually worked for the city of Wellston. They were one of my clients when I was actually brought in, because I don't know if you knew this, and my guess is you did, is that at that time, before Mayor Griffin, they were in a receivership. So they didn't even control their own finances. And so they brought me in to get them out. They hired me to get them out of receivership. And so I was working there doing that as this guy who, some dudes has filed as a write-in. You don't have no chance to win. I'm like, and I wasn't involved in it because I wasn't running for office. I was hired.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I heard about some guy, Nate Griffin, never heard of him, whatever. And all of a sudden the votes come in and then, the mayor had the most votes, but they were like, well, we still got to count these write-in ballots. But yeah, she probably still won. It ain't no thing. And then all of a sudden, not only did he win,
a landslide.
And Nate's one of my guys, like one of my dear friends. And I didn't know him at that time. And I remember he was coaching, he still coaches. And so I went to meet him at one of his coaches when he was coaching practice for the first time. And my thoughts were, and I just known this from working with municipalities, is that when someone new comes in, they should be able to pick their own people. So I don't want to stand in the way when he wants to pick his own people. So I was going in like saying, hey, this is how it's done. I'm happy to step aside and so you can bring in your own people, no problem. But we talked and we just connected like the very first time. We literally talked for about two or 3 hours the very first time we met, and have been real good friends together since then, and done a lot of good things with Mayor Griffin, including creating the North County Policing Cooperative, working with him, Velda City. We were a part of that negotiating team that created the North County Policing Cooperative, and that was out of the courageousness of Mayor Griffin, because everyone knew in Wellston that a change was needed. He was the one that was willing to step up and do it. Now, he's probably about to hit me up as I just praised him, but I still stand by what I said.
Love it. Well, we got to get out of here and make room for another show that's coming on, but we appreciate you stopping by and being so forthcoming and being so transparent with who you are, what you do. And I love that you are not afraid to speak of your accomplishments, because sometimes we talk, be humble, but every now and then you got to brag on what it is that you're doing so people know that you're making a real difference. So we appreciate you for stopping by so much. Until we talk to you next time, we want you to get your money up, because you absolutely can do it. But more importantly, you deserve to do it, each and every single one of you.